And Jeannie is my friend out there in New Jersey.
Yes, I
There she
am.
is.
I'm here to be your moderator today. I am the marketing director for art and craft for Winsor, Newton, and Colart in North America. So we're real excited today to bring Marla to
Yes,
you for a really interesting watercolor activity, a piece of artwork that I think you're all going to enjoy making.
I'm super excited. Glad to see fellow creators and friends out there getting all set up. Waiting just a few minutes to let everyone get in from the waiting room.
Right. We seem to
Well,
have quite a few people coming in, so a lot of people are joining us from all over. We have lots of people from Florida. We have, hi everybody, Texas, LA.
very cool. Oh, I have a Liam. Oh, I'm not Liam. Okay. Cool.
We got a good amount of people. So Marla's going to show us some really relaxing watercolor techniques that I think everyone will be happy with what you end up with at the end of this session. And as we're going through, please give me some feedback. Tell me things you'd like me to continue to have her do or stop doing, and then go forward, what else you'd like for us to show you. So we want to make this as interactive and as we can.
All right.
All right, we have someone asking where the supplies are. It's on the supply list. If you go to the class that you registered for, there's a list of supplies there.
Okay. Sounds good. Well, I think we're probably ready.
I think we are. I think we have a good amount of people coming. We're going to have people joining us from all over. Why don't you take it away, Marla?
All right. So I'm Marla Morrison, and I'm an artist. And I've been an artist with the Fine Art Collective for Winsor, Newton, and Liquitex for probably over 21 years now, just a little while. But I've had a great time going into colleges and universities as part of that education program, talking about our materials. And today I'm obviously going to be focusing on the Winsor Newton Cotman Watercolors as we do this contemporary circle painting. I'm also a wife and a mom to 3 kiddos, a 14-year-old and 8-year-old twins, which keep me busy, but happy to have them around. And that's it. So definitely ask questions as you have them. Jeannie will be happy to send them on to me, and we'll talk about them on work, and we'll all learn something from it. So I guess we're going to go to the hands-on view, Lindsay, if you don't mind. And what we're going to show, I've got the Winsor Newton watercolor paper here. I've got the rough texture. It's our professional watercolor paper. You can use the watercolor paper you have on hand, but obviously I really like this because it's 100% cotton, which what that's going to do for you is going to give you a lot of strength when you're working. Because if you're a watercolor artist that, who knows, maybe you make a little mistake that you want to clean up, or you want to do some layers and you want to change it later, the amount of rubbing that 100% cotton can take is quite strong. So that's a good thing. It's also going to be archival and permanent, so you're not going to get any yellowing over time, which is super important. I'm using the 12 by 16 inch size. Obviously, you can use whatever size paper you want. I just found it a nice size for my table and what I wanted to make. This is a watercolor block. Blocks, I can show right here. Blocks are stacks of watercolor paper that are going to have an adhesive edge over most of the perimeter. You'll see right here that this little rectangular white area, this is where you would put a palette knife. Because what you would do is you do your painting, which like I'm going to do today, you do your painting on this, and when you're done and it's dry, you put a palette knife in this little slot here to remove the paper. You just go around the edge of the adhesive to remove it from the block. Well, what's the point of that? Well, a block is going to give you a nice stable surface for the watercolor, because when you add water to your paper, if it's not in a block format or taped down, you can get some buckling even on quality paper. So that's what a block does for you. It keeps it nice and flat and smooth. Okay. Now, we're going to talk about how this is a grid style, just to kind of give a particular format and help me stay inside the lines for the most part and give a nice circular feel to each circle that I do. You can certainly do this in a more freestyle way, but I wanted to show you how I made my grid in case you want to do this on your own. The math was easy, which I liked, 16 inches. So what I did is I just started at 1 inch on each side. I like to have a little 1 inch border or a little border around the whole piece, just to, I don't know, just to make it better for framing down the road. And also I just kind of like that negative space, but you certainly don't have to do a border. But if you want to do the border, you can see that I did 1 inch, 1 inch, and then I'm going to connect and just draw a very light line. It's important with any pencil work that you do to make it as light as possible so it's easy to erase down the road, okay? And if you paint over the pencil and it's dark, it can be difficult to remove it. So just keep that in mind, that you make your pencil lines quite light. Okay, and again, I'm just going to do inch and an inch. Can you do that the whole way? Don't worry, I'm not going to do my whole grid, but I wanted to at least give you a sense of how this started or how to start your own at home. And so when you do the math, what made sense to me was to do 2 inch circles throughout. So again, I can just now use my straight edge. Here's 2 inch, 2 inch, 2 inch, and so on. Works out nicely. Then I would do the same at the top.
Marla, some people are asking how you're doing the measurements. So we're just kind of breezing along on this one because she actually has a grid set up, but it's just to give you perspective. So,
yeah. So this was a 12 by 16. So when you subtract an inch from each side, that gives you 14 inches this way. So it was easy just to have then 7 squares on the bottom, and then 12 minus 2, 10, 5 squares this way. Okay, that was just easy because I got 12 by 16 paper. But for yourself, you can make the grid whatever size you want, whatever size squares you'd like. But if you're wanting to do mine exactly, it's 12 by 16 inch paper, go in an inch, and then mark 2 inch sections, top and bottom, and then line up with your straight edge and just gently or lightly go down. Does that make sense?
I think that's very helpful because lots of people are asking. As she said, this is just how many squares that you're going to use. This is just to frame the art because it's circular so that you have more symmetry. But
there's no magic to this grid. Definitely no magic to it. Okay.
Yeah.
It's just
as you said, we're going to show you one variation at a particular size of the circles. But this is your preference. Once you get familiar with it and you like it, you might want to go larger, you might want to do smaller, and so that will determine the size of how many squares that you have.
Right. So again, I did it fairly light, so it's probably hard to see, and I'm not going to do the whole thing. And don't panic if you wanted to work alongside me. It really is not essential that you have a grid to understand this project. It's supposed to be relaxing, so don't let it be a stress. This is just something that if you wanted to recreate it again after we go through this, you can make a grid and be a little more precise. But for now, I'm doing like a cooking show, and I started the grid, but I've made my own that we can to show you now that I can work in. But again, since you probably aren't going to have time to whip out a grid really quickly, go ahead and do it what is going to be what I'd call more freestyle, and then you'll have the capability to do the grid later on your own if you'd like. Okay. Before we go much further, yeah.
Someone just because they're really really intrigued with the grid work, and just we want to reiterate, it's a guide. So your squares are roughly how big each square, just to give somebody perspective. Like how much would each one of those squares measure? Because quite a few people are asking about.
These are 2 inch by 2 inch squares.
Yeah.
And again, the only reason I picked that, when you move in give yourself a 1 inch border around the paper, and then do 2 inch squares throughout. The math worked out nicely. That's all it was about. Nothing magical about that, other than it gave me a 1 inch border and equal 2 inch squares throughout. So.
Right. So what you're having is, like, as I could see, it looks like you have 7 on one side, and you have
5
on the other.
Yeah.
All right. So I'll put that in the chat for everyone so you can follow along.
Okay, sounds good. I forgot to mention, and so you guys can keep doing that if I'm talking if you want, but I'm using rough paper. This paper is a slightly different color, but I wanted to mention real quickly that there are 3 main types of watercolor papers or textures of watercolor paper to be aware of. The smoothest is called hot press, and as it has to do with how it goes to the press. There are no felts used when the paper is being run through, and so because of that, it's a very smooth texture. A lot of times illustrators or artists who want a lot of fine detail will gravitate towards the hot press paper. Now there's another texture called cold press. I know it's really hard to see in here, but if you were to rub your hands through it or on it, it's gonna have a slight bit of texture. It's kind of like the in the middle texture, not too rough, not too smooth. It's a very good all-purpose texture that a lot of artists gravitate towards. And in fact, when I'm in stores like Michael's, it's the texture that you're probably going to find most often. And of course, Winsor Newton has this texture as well. And then the one I'm using today is called rough. And I don't know if you can see, probably can't on the texture, but rough is just like the name sounds. You run your hand over it and it's going to have a bit of physical texture. That texture, what that does for you with watercolor is that it gives you a lovely visual texture to the paint, depending on which colors you're using. You've ever seen watercolors that some of the colors look really kind of granulated, even though it's the same color. It's like it'll have color variation, but it's not just a plain stroke of color. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's where the pigment settles into the texture of the paper and gives a really lovely watercolor only kind of effect. It's not something that you can readily do with oil or acrylic. So a lot of times artists will like the rough paper to really accentuate the lovely characteristics of watercolor. And that's the texture I have today. But again, you can use whatever texture watercolor paper you have or you would want to use. It's really up to you with that. Okay.
Once again, I think that the grid we're showing this technique just so that it's offering guidance. She's putting it on lightly. It could be erased, but you could absolutely go freestyle. And
yeah.
That's the usability about this. You can do whatever you like.
Yes.
Very simple. Don't stress over, as she said.
Yeah, this is definitely meant to be just a relaxing project. And in fact, if you want, I can give you a sense. So this is the idea of what I'm going to be making today. It's very, it's in a grid format, okay? But this is something I was playing with earlier, but this is what we're talking about when we say more freestyle. Okay, this is where you don't have I don't have a grid, but I'm just making circles that are gently touching each other. So if you don't have time for a grid, this is certainly the kind of idea that you can make. Okay, so I think that will be just as lovely as a grid format. It's really about just kind of zoning into how the watercolor behaves in that circle pattern, and you don't have to really be stressing about a certain subject matter. You're just getting into the look and beauty of each color. Okay. All right. So speaking of color, we're using the Winsor Newton Cotman Watercolor range. Just a few colors actually to get quite a large variety. I'll go ahead and squeeze these out and talk about each color. This is the Cotman Alizarin Crimson Hue. And we're not going to use this color straight. We're going to use it as a mix. So let me tell you guys, if this ever happens where you get quite a bit, this watercolor is glycerin and pigment. And so I don't know if you can see how I got quite a bit of extra glycerin at the top. If that were to ever happen to you, don't hesitate to contact Winsor Newton and we'll be happy to help you out, because that's just, you're going to have a little tiny bit of glycerin at the top of each tube, but that seems a bit much to me. So when you squeeze this out, you'll get a bit of, you don't need to put a lot of color down, just a little will do. This is a moist tube color. Alizarin Crimson Hue is a popular color, and it's really great for getting violets, and so that's why I wanted to use it. This is Ultramarine Blue. Ultramarine Blue is a super popular color, and I'm sure most of you have used it before, no matter what paint media you've been working with. And this is Cobalt Blue Hue. Now, when I keep saying the word hue, hue is your cue that we're using a synthetic pigment instead of the traditional or the mineral source. Well, why does that matter? Well, a couple of things. It's going to give you a lower, typically a lower priced tube of paint, which can be helpful when you're starting out. But it's also a way to get very close to a genuine source without having to deal with either the health and safety implications. Like a cobalt is a natural pigment mined from the earth, and it's not something you'd want to be spraying and breathing in because it's something that you don't want to be getting in your lungs. So it's typically not found in a range like Cotman, which is more of a student range. So we keep those heavy metal colors out of our Cotman range, but we offer this lovely cobalt blue hue, which is a synthetic pigment mix that gives you the look and feel of a cobalt without having to use that traditional, more expensive cobalt pigment. Okay, so that's the idea behind the word hue. It's a cue that a different pigment source is being used. This color is called Viridian Hue. Viridian is typically a transparent, vibrant green. And then sap green is a very traditionally popular color. It's originally made from buckthorn berries, so that's kind of an interesting bit of color history. Oops. And always have paper towels handy because you're going to need them, right? No matter what you're using. But genuine sap green is not considered artist permanent. It's a color has a long history, but as you can imagine, berry juice would not be a very permanent color choice. So Winsor Newton offers this sap green made from synthetic pigments that gives you a much more permanent color choice. This is our cadmium yellow pale hue. So again, close to a genuine cadmium in behavior and hue, but not the cadmium heavy metal source. Okay. And then here, that was cadmium yellow pale hue, and then this is cadmium yellow hue. So this is a slightly deeper tone where you could say slightly more red biased yellow. Now you notice you don't need a lot of color to squeeze out on your palette, but you can always refresh as needed. I just have a little porcelain palette here. You can use anything you have handy. This is a plastic palette that I may actually use for when I get some mixes going. But really, if you have any type of divided, even like a plasticware container or something like that, that could just give you little divided sections of color, that can be perfectly fine to use with your watercolors. Okay.
Marla, one more question that keeps coming back is about the paper. There's quite a few inquiries about it. So in terms of what you're currently using, can you just explain about the surface?
So, yeah, I'm using the rough texture Winsor Newton professional watercolor paper. And it's 140 pound. I think I forgot to mention that, but 140 pound is like a good weight. Sometimes you'll see 90 pound, which is I think that's usually too thin for me. 140 pound is nice. What's really also very nice is 300 pound, which is much thicker than what I have, but you don't need it for this. So it's just the pound has to do with how much the ream weighs, I guess, and that gives you a hint as to how thick the paper is. This is 140 pound. Did that answer it for him, Jeannie?
Yes, I think what there's lots of questions about the texture too. So there's rough and then there's.
Yeah, so the hot press is the smooth texture that's really good for fine detail typically, and then cold press is that in the middle where it's not too rough, not too smooth. I don't think I mentioned it, but cold press is run through the press with I probably won't get this exactly right, but it's run through with a felt that gives a felt piece that gives a slight bit of texture. And then rough paper, when they want to make a rough paper, it's run through the press with a rougher texture felt, which impresses itself onto that cotton paper, if that makes sense. Okay? So that's how you get that rough texture, which holds onto the pigment characteristics of that watercolor in a very lovely way. Okay?
Okay.
All right. So for my brush, I'm going to be using the Winsor Newton Cotman Filbert. This is a 1/4 inch head measured. Okay, let me tell you about the just real quick. So this is the handle. The silver part is the ferrule. This is the tip or the head of the brush. Cotman brushes are a synthetic filament, which is really quite nice for durability. And it's special in that it holds watercolor quite well for a synthetic. And so it's a nice one to use. I love how the Winsor Newton ferrules are seamless, so you're not going to get any weird kind of creasing, or sometimes you can get a slight rust creeping up on the where if a ferrule is not if it's not in one piece and crimped. It's also double crimped onto the handle, so that's quite nice if it comes to if you accidentally let your brush soak in the water for too long and it expands the handle, and then when it dries it loosens again. And then the ferrule gets loose. I know that happened to me all the time before I knew more about watercolors. So Winsor Newton Cotman brushes are really nice for that. One other little tip to share is that the Winsor Newton brushes, the hair doesn't stop here. I don't know if you can see that. It stops, the hair goes the length of the ferrule. So sometimes when you buy less expensive brushes, you can have a bunch of hairs flaking out as you're working. I don't know if that's happened to you, but it's definitely happened to me. The reason often for that is that they're tied too close to the tip, and so they loosen over time. The Winsor Newton brushes are tied in the middle of the hair, which goes all the way down to the top of the handle. So it's much more, or it's much less likely that you're going to lose any hairs as you're painting or cleaning. Okay. So that's the type brush that I'll be using. I just have a regular old water container over here. It doesn't need to be in the shot really. It's just a water container. You always want to have plenty of water with watercolor.
Marla, we're having a couple more inquiries, lots of good questions about you're showing tube color. And I see in the screen you have some pans. So they're asking about preferences, and yes, you can use either.
Yes.
Obviously, the palette's even customized. You could use whatever colors you prefer. This is just, we're just giving you the specifics, so it'll come out like the piece of artwork that we displayed.
Exactly. Yes. So yes, I'm using tube colors for this project. Tube colors are typically best in studio, where you can lay out your palette. You're going to be working in one session. You plan on using that color during one painting session and not saving it. Because when you save pan color, the glycerin evacuates, and two things happen when the glycerin evacuates. The brilliance of the color is compromised, and it becomes really difficult on your brushes to re-wet that dry tube color. So you really save the life of your brush if you use tube color in studio and use it in one session. Don't try to save it. If you would prefer to have a setup that's a little more transportable, that you can take with you into the field when you're painting, that's what's great about pan or cake color, like I have here. This is, you can get this in the Cotman set. This happens to be a palette I put together. Like Jeannie said, I switched out the colors for my own preference. But the idea is the same. It's a palette that with a water well, and you can do your color mixing here. And you can move this little water palette to the side, but there's a thumb hole here, which I don't need to take time moving, and it comes with a little brush. But what's nice about pan color is that the glycerin is formulated in such a way that it stays trapped inside the cake or pan color. And so it doesn't evacuate even after it dries. So it's easier on your brush, and you get consistently brilliant color. So I have it out partly because I like to look at it, but also just, yeah, it's a good time to mention that you can use either for this project, but it's your preference. But I'm using tube because I'm in studio, and it makes sense, since I'm going to do it in one session.
Marla, before you start on and creating those lovely circles, a couple questions about the brush. If you don't have the Cotman brush or the shape of the brush, there's lots of inquiries. Because we want to be able to emulate that same clean circular pattern.
Sure.
What size, roughly, if someone was looking at it, if they had another type of brush in their studio, could they be using? What would you say?
Sure. Great questions. Yeah, and I need to mention the whole point of a Filbert. That was a pun. I didn't need to make that pun, but anyways, the idea of a Filbert, I'll mention that first and then talk about sizing. So A filbert is this interesting shape that has a flat and a kind of rounded top. Can you guys see that? There you go. Sorry, I'm backwards here. So it's flat base and it goes to a rounded top. What's nice about a filbert, it's kind of if a pointed brush and a flat brush had a child, it would be a filbert, okay? So let me grab, this is a pointed tip brush. Let me see that. This is a pointed tip, which I think most of us are familiar with because most sets we get when you're younger come with a round pointed brush. And then this is a flat. So a flat brush has that really crispy edge to it, which is nice for if I say I were trying to paint these squares and I want to get super precise on my line work, this crispy edge of this flat head would make that really convenient. Okay, I like a filbert for a project like this because it really gives you the beauty of both the round and the flat head. It's like, it's again, it's an in-betweener, okay? You get the coverage of a flat, but you also get some of the more tight control that you get with a round head or a round tip. Does that make sense? If you don't have a filbert, I guess I would suggest, I think I would probably use a round as my next option. If you didn't have a filbert, that should work fine. And really, if you have a flat, you can do that too. It'll just be a little trickier because when you're doing the edges, it's going to want to get kind of calligraphy-like on you and not be even. But I would say that yes, a round would be your next, would be my next choice for sure. It should be just fine.
Sounds great, Marla, because we have some really great feedback coming from the participants as well, and they're making some wonderful recommendations. And just as you said, the round is a great option. As I said, it's preferences and what you have, and Marla's going to just begin and start showing how to lay down the color. Yeah,
definitely. You can work with what you have, and I chose this for certain reasons, but certainly yes, you can. A round should be just fine. What you have. Okay. So either we've got our surface with a grid or without. That's really fine either way. I'm going to emulate the one that you guys saw on the advertisement, which is mainly kind of, it's your jewel tones, right? With the violets, blues, and greens. And so there's no right or wrong to what I choose first. If I were to do this painting every day, every painting would look different based on how I pick the color for that day. And that's going to be true for you too. Everybody, if we could see everyone's paintings, which actually we could at the end, if you want to post what you make at #MakeItWithMichaels at the end, every painting would look different because that's the beauty and character of watercolor. Okay? Even though we start with the same colors, each piece is going to have its own unique beauty to it, partly because it's you doing it, of course, but also because the natural character and flow of watercolor. So I love, that's something I really embrace about the watercolor process. All right, let's start with our Cobalt Blue hue. Okay. And I don't know, I've been doing it without saying it, but you always want to wet your brush first. Water is the vehicle for watercolor paint. The vehicle is what drives it to the surface. Okay, so you've got to get that vehicle, that water, to wet up your color. It gets on your brush. And then this, again, the grid is a guideline. I'm just going to freehand it in here, okay? Just kind of freehand that circle just by making these smaller strokes. I'm going to add some more water. And of course, you can turn your paper as needed. I'm going to add a little more water to get it a little juicier. And you just kind of keep tweaking it till you feel like it's the shape that you wanted. And it's kind of like handwriting, sort of like practicing handwriting. You start and you do the same letter over and over until you get this flow of the shape and the form of the stroke, right? So now I want a little more color added. That's just the Cobalt Blue on its own, but you know, why not add some Viridian to it? So just I'm going to add a little bit at the bottom here. And again, I want it juicy because part of this whole project that I really love is when the circles come together and I say they kind of kiss, right? They just touch each other ever so, of course I'm the one making them do it, but they just touch each other ever so carefully, and then that's when you get that lovely watercolor bleed, okay? So I'm gonna go to my next circle. I use just Viridian. It's a little bit tainted with the Cobalt Blue, which again is fine because I want these all of the colors to look like they live in the same painting. So they're going to get slightly, you know, mixed with each other. Now I need to make this circle just a little bit bigger, or I could come over here if I wanted it to, if I want them to kind of kiss and get slightly closer. It's okay to come back to that first one I did and just ever so slightly get them to touch. And then the beautiful thing that happens is that those watercolors mingle and then they start to blend on their own. It's going to be more apparent when it's dry, but that's the whole process. Just choosing your colors, making your circles, and then watching that beautiful flow happen. So now I've chosen the Ultramarine Blue for this circle.
Marla, people are asking too, it's you're going off camera. So what she's doing is she is dipping the brush in water.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Yes, I am definitely dipping in water between.
Right, to clean the brush off a little bit. But as she said, it's very fluid. The colors don't have to be so exact, and it's there's just going to be some blending along the way as well. So it's not so exact.
Yeah. I'm definitely just dipping in water, just saturating that brush. And then just, if I need to, I'll get a little more color, like I'm going to do a little more ultramarine. And I don't know if you can see how these two touched and we've got that lovely color flow again happening. You don't have to go in this linear format. If I wanted to, I could jump down here or I could go over here. I think just because to me, this is not about, you know, this is not about abstract expressionism, right? This is about, oh, nice, someone showed their painting. This is about just getting into that meditative kind of Zen-like, oh, I'm going to do this circle, this circle, this circle. I'm going to change up the colors, but I'm just going to zone into that painting process and watch what it does. To me, it's just a really relaxing thing to do. You put some nice music on and just have fun with it.
Marla, what color are you using there?
This is, I'm going back to the Viridian.
Which is the same color that you used in the second circle,
yes,
right?
Same with this one. Yeah. But I'm going to change this one up a little bit, and it's already kissed right there. Already touched. So now I need a little more water. You can tell you need more water when your brush starts to what I call break on the paper, where you don't get that flow anymore. Just dip your brush in a little more water. Okay, there's no hard and fast rule into how much water you need. The more water you add, the lighter the color will become. If you want a more vibrant watercolor experience, just try and add more without adding quite so much water. But again, I'm not really thinking about that too much. I'm just responding to what I have in front of me. If I feel like I can add a little water and I want it to be a little lighter, I will. Otherwise, I just leave it as is. I like how these are flowing together, so I feel like I'm getting a decent amount of water. Here I'm going to change up this Viridian a little bit, and I'm going to use my Cad Yellow Pale. Now obviously I'm already mixing my cadmium and my Viridian, so I'm getting more of a lime green, and that's totally fine. I just want to add this here. Because another interesting thing that watercolors do that other paint media doesn't is that the color can do something called flocculate. And that's where it settles into its own areas of the paper. And we get a really neat effect called haloing. Some artists love it, some don't. I love it. That's where the different edges of color can kind of reveal themselves again once they dry. So in other words, like, let me show you on this piece. This kind of, this had a lot of water, and I didn't see that kind of edging when it was wet, but once it dried, I got that halo effect and that settling of this flocculation of that pigment into the paper. To me, that's the beauty of watercolor, and that's something that acrylic and oil just won't do for you. So I always kind of go for that. But again, you're the artist, you're the creator here. So I found that if you add a little extra water, that haloing effect is enhanced. It also depends on the colors you choose. Ultramarine blue that we're using, it naturally flocculates to a greater extent than, say, the Viridian can, or the Alizarin crimson, which we haven't used yet. So you'll get to know your colors the more you use them, and you'll be like, oh yeah, that, you don't have to, it doesn't say flocculating on the tube, but the more you use it, you'll be like, oh yeah, that color granulates, it settles into the paper in a different way. I really like that. Okay. So now let's transition to, let's go to our Cobalt Blue hue again. And this time, are y'all feeling comfortable with the circles? Is that coming together for you? What's the word, Jeannie? Are they feeling good about their circles?
Everyone seems to be enjoying it very much. They're
Good.
commenting on how relaxing it is.
Good. Yeah. Now that we're doing, everyone's like zoning into the painting.
That's right. The repetition, you know, it's not complicated, but you know, the layering. Everyone has putting in their own colors.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's what we want.
I think what the imperfections are what make it unique, and everyone's will come out obviously different. So
yes, that's the beauty part of it. Definitely. That's why it's handmade. That's why you couldn't get a printout like this. The printing process wouldn't look like this. So it's, I mean, you could print out someone's painting they did and get the detail, but there's no way to really, that I know of, to get a really close watercolor simulation digitally yet. So now that was the Cobalt Blue. I'm going to add, let's get some violet going here. So I'm going to go to my Alizarin Crimson. Just add a little bit in there just to give a little hint of violet. What's nice about the Cotman colors is that they give you clean color mixes, which sometimes can be difficult for the range to do. But by having clean color mixes is super important, because that means you don't need as many colors to have a more expansive range of color available for your painting. Does that make sense? So if you don't have to have 50 tubes, you can maybe have, you know, 10 to 15, just depending on how you're working. So, all right, now I'm going to start with alizarin for this last one. And you can see it's already gone a bit purple again, which is fine. And I'm going to add more cobalt to it this time. Okay. I want this last one to be a little bit deeper, so I'm making sure to saturate it a little bit more. And since this is wet, I'm probably going to do this line in reverse. I'm going to go right to left so I can take advantage of some of the wet color. Let's do the sap green now. And
more or less, some questions are coming in about the color in your palette. You can see when you dropped it in, when you layered it into the palette, then you're pulling it away with the wet brush to create more water. So can you talk a little bit to that technique?
Sure.
Rather
so
than putting down full concentrated color, she's pulling away.
Gotcha. Yeah. So with watercolor, it's mentioned that water is the vehicle, so it drives the paint to the surface. And for oil and acrylic painters, that's a very different concept, because with both of those media, while you could get thinner layers, typically people are using a thicker layer right from the tube. Okay, with watercolor, that's one reason why the tubes are so small. It's deceiving. This tube will last you quite a long time because you need so little during a painting session. In fact, I squeezed out probably a pea-size amount of each color. And so yes, what I'm doing is I'm adding water in this little well, and I'm just using the tip of my brush to pull some of the color from that pea-size amount of paint, and then just circle it around in my brush to mix it in evenly with the water, and then just add it to the paper. And that's, now when I talked about adding saturation, getting it a little more intense, I'll just add a few more layers of that watercolor to deepen it a bit for when it dries. One thing that all of you will notice is that when your painting dries, it's going to be ever so slightly lighter in value. That just has to do with the properties of water. And so when watercolors dry through that water evaporating and the pigments left behind on the paper, and just the property of water leaving the surface, the colors just will look a slight bit lighter. So, but the details also become much more evident when the water evacuates too. So like, I don't know if you can see it on here, but already this is dry, and I can see a lot more variation, and I'm getting some of that flocculation that's settling into the hollows of the paper. So it happens really quickly. All right, so I added a little bit of my Ultramarine Blue to the sap green, and I wanted to kiss my violet up here. And so that's gonna bleed down a bit, I hope. Now something else that I'm doing, so I touch it just barely, I just barely touch that circle, and then I kind of draw it out. I'm not touching the color, because in order to get that beautiful bleeding edge or that feathery property, you don't want to run your brush in it because it'll just mix the color. But I'm just kind of maybe like a couple millimeters away from that bleed. I'm just pulling the water back, and that helps everything flow downward to get more of that that bleed look that I want. Okay. So now mixing in the porcelain well, and I'm back to my Viridian, and just roughing in my circle. Some artists like to leave the breaks of the watercolor. I think that's totally fine. I mean, sorry, the breaks of the paper showing through. I think that's fine. It lends a sense of certain kind of motion to the piece and energy. Because I want this to have a little bit more of a relaxing kind of feel, I'm going to smooth that out. And again, I'm going to have them kiss ever so slightly. And again, draw it out a little bit. Okay. There's no,
yeah. Couple questions, just as the size of your brush again, because someone was just very curious about that.
So the common way of saying it is smeared. I don't know if that's 6 millimeter or / 1/4 inch.
That's right, 1/4 inch.
But I could have easily also picked this 10 millimeter 3/8 inch.
Right. So
yeah, it's your preference on that. In fact, maybe I'll switch to that one to see if I can talk about how that would feel a little different. Let's see.
Right. That would be a good thing just to show, because there's a lot of people using different types of brushes. And the other question, the other question that's pretty predominant, keeps coming out, is that the saturation of the colors of the circles. So you're pulling away and she's going over and you're layering more color on it. But realize too, when you dry, there is going to be a different effect. So they may look consistent now, but won't the paper make a difference when it dries as well?
Yes, definitely. Rough texture like the one I'm using will be a little bit more of a dominant look. I mean, dominant difference, but cold press will also show. Hot press would show too. It's just going to be a softer look. Okay, that smooth paper is going to give a softer look. But yes, it definitely looks different when dry, and you'll see it even as you progress. As it starts to dry, depending on the pigments used, they'll settle into the paper differently, and some of that haloing will occur and the bleeding edge will show. It just really reveals the beauty in it when it dries. So that's another part I love about the whole process, is how it changes before your eyes, you know. So this is I'm going to use this one next. I'll use this Cotman brush. It's a little bit bigger, and so theoretically you can make it a little quicker. Let's see. Let's go to, how about we'll go back to the sap green. That repetitive motion, it just is funny how you get that muscle memory and you just start to be able to work more quickly once you do the same shape over and over. Just takes a little bit of practice and you got it.
Many of the viewers are asking, how are you creating these consistent concentric circles? And they're intrigued with how perfect your circles are and your edges.
Well, you're very,
practice.
You're very kind. Also, the phone is a bit away from the surface, so you're not seeing all the little edges. But yeah, no, it's definitely practice, and that's the grid helps with that. But again, you don't have to have the grid. I think it's really, let me see if I can talk it through when I do the next one here. So we'll do, I'm in a more green mode. Let's do some more Viridian. So I'm right-handed, so it seems like when I've been doing it, I'm starting at the top, going to the left and down, okay? And then I just fill in a little bit, and then I'm going to the top and down to the right. But I usually have to add more water at that point, so down to the right. And now, since I can't see as well because my right hand is blocking my view, now I'm just more carefully making that circular edge. And then now I go to the bottom to finish it out. I touch up any little bump or whatever that seems a little bit off. And then a lot of times it'll happen without me trying, but if I need to get them to bump up to each other, I'll just draw a quick little line to get that flow going. And then I'll fill in the circle like so. And I think I'm going to leave that one green, but you know what? I'm going to flood this with some extra water. Just see what that does.
I think we're going to,
yeah.
I think it'd be great if you could show a couple consistently in a row, just because to move things along.
Okay.
And also you will have the brush strokes. That's part of the allure of using this technique.
Yes.
That is expected. So
right. Yeah. I am definitely not trying to get uniform circles. So again, start at the top, go down. I've got my Alizarin with Ultramarine Blue. Start at the top and go down. Visually try to get to the middle of the bottom square. I'm kind of I'm thinking of, you know, the middle line of each square, and I'm trying to get the fullest part of the circle to that middle line of each square, if that makes sense. And then again, I come around this way, they bump together. That green bleeds into the alizarin, and then I want to touch this up a little bit. So this is where I'm switching to that more pointier part of the filbert. Oops, I have a do not disturb, but I guess that doesn't count for medicine reminders. Sorry. Okay. All right, you guys with me still?
Yeah, everyone's doing good. I think we're just going to try to move along with a few more of the circles to show some of the repetitiveness.
Yep, so now I'm just gonna, so I had that alizarin, I'm gonna add the cobalt on top. I often think of kind of like full moons with the shadow of the moon, you know, as you're working. I mean, you can think about anything you want, obviously, but that circle shape, of course, lends itself to a full moon. Let me use a round brush so you can see how that, let me grab a watercolor brush.
Some of you are asking about the types of brushes, the palettes. This is all just guidance. And this is a palette that Marla started out with because we thought it was really soothing and appealing, but whatever your preference is, because even in the beginning, she showed a very vibrant yellow, a warm palette as well, which we could show you. Do you have that other palette or that other colorway, Marla, so you could show them? Because I think there's...
Okay, well, I'll show, this was the first one with much more yellow, still similar colorway. And then this is one that I did without the grid, okay? So you can see, oops, sorry, I'm upside down here, so it's kind of freaking me out. There we go. This is one, a smaller scale, no grid, but just that repetition and just trying my best to make the circle similar size. It made a grid format, but I like how it kind of got a little wonky edge. It's just almost like it's sliding down the surface a little bit. But that's just, yeah, more of your warm colors there. Okay.
Looks great. Yeah, I just, because these are just, it doesn't need to be so exacting. And like you said, freestyle, you can go off the palette, you can go, you know, arranging the circles such that they touch in more spots. And the blue between the two colors is perfectly fine. And like I said, water is really what's going to be the method to keep the flow of it. If you want, you can always go back, add some more, right, in terms of the color, if you want it more saturated.
Definitely. And in fact, I've switched, this isn't a, I couldn't find a round watercolor brush handy. This is an acrylic brush that it's a long handle, which isn't ideal for sitting at a desk because you don't want to poke yourself in the eye. But the idea is I can use this round brush and make the circles as well. The same way, I start at the center top, move down and around, and then do the other side. It's just getting the rhythm of your own hand and how you push it out to make a circle through practice. But this acrylic brush will be fine for this because I'm really working with the repetition and not so much doing a lot of I hate to say the word fancy watercolor, but you know what I mean. It's more, this is more about the circle, the color, the motion, and for that, this brush is just fine. So I'm going to, this first circle is quite dry now for the most part, but I can add water to it if I want to try to enhance a bleed between the two. Now what's going to happen is when this dries, this is going to be a little bit of a funky kind of water edge, but I don't care. I like that funkiness, okay? If you don't add water to one that's dry because you'll get more of that haloing, but I like that. I kind of go for that. So that's how you can enhance haloing, is by adding more water with a little bit of color to a dried section of your painting, okay? So I'm going to move back. So I think I'm going to use that slightly wider brush. That did seem to make it work a little more handily. Sap green. Yeah, and you can kind of see, I'm not too concerned with how saturated the color is when I'm building the circle, because I can easily adjust that when I'm ready by adding more color or even changing. Like here, I'm going to add some Viridian to that sap green. Okay. And then I'm going to see if I can put a little break between these two. And even just that simple act, watercolor is perpetually re-wettable. So if this painting had been drying for a month, I could come back and add water to it, and it's still going to be, I'm going to be able to lift it from the surface. So that's something to be aware of, that you never want to have your watercolor painting in like a bathroom or something where water could splash on it, because it will ruin it. But the beauty part of that is, you know, you could on some level make changes down the road if you needed to, because it's.
And Marla, one other thing that I noticed is that you're going off camera and you're dipping your brush into some water and then just wiping off the excess so that the color isn't leaking all over. Because one of the viewers is having a bit of a very wet palette right now. So there's a lot of. So how would you? She's not going to go. How would you recommend that she avoid the very wet paint? Her circles are bleeding out too much.
Okay, so bleeding out too much. So what I would say, yeah, so I am going to, let me see. Let me move this here. So here's my water container. I'll dip my brush. I don't know if you can see this, but then I'll kind of tap it on the edge sometimes if I want to get a little less water. Any of the edges. I mean, I know you can't see that well, but any of the edges, just to shed a little bit of water if I needed to. And then put that in the color that I choose. Mix it around. And if I feel like that's still too juicy, you can just wipe it on the side of your well or your palette, right? And then see if that's a little better consistency. Now, if you feel like you've already got it to the paper and it's too saturated, you can take a little wad of paper towel, or if you have, like, sometimes in kits, you'll get a little sea sponge, something like that. You could take that and dab the center of the circle or wherever it's too juicy, and you can see how that lifts the watercolor, and then you could repaint as needed. Okay, I'm getting mine juicy, but yeah, I guess I'm not flooding it yet, or I'm not getting super flooded. But yeah, if you feel like your circles as you're going are too flooded, you can, again, take your watercolor, your paper towel, and just dab it up to get up some of that excess water as needed. I'm going to add it back because I need it. Hope that made sense to you or helped out.
Marla, another question that's coming up is about preserving and sealing it. Because it does look so pretty, and it looks like it would look great. And if you wanted to use it in a bathroom or in a place where there was water, you really can't put anything over it, but I guess you could frame it and put it under glass.
Definitely. Yeah. So watercolor, yeah, that's a great point. Watercolor really, the best way to get it prepped for showing is, or hanging, is put it under glass. A lot of times the watercolor competitions, they won't allow you to enter any piece that has any type of fixative or varnish on top, because that deepens the color. And for watercolor purists, they want to see the watercolor itself. They don't want to have any top coat on it, and so the downside for that for display is that not really a downside. It just means that you have that framing it is the best way to protect it. Framing it under glass. Glass is easy to clean, and you could have it in a situation like a bathroom. Now, here's one little caveat to a humid environment like a bathroom. Depending on where you live and how humid it is and how humid that room stays, mold can grow on paper and on other surfaces, canvases too. So if it's an environment that stays like a pool room, maybe that stays perpetually humid, almost drippy humid, then you need to use caution even if it's framed, because the humidity can still get underneath the glass and could be problematic, if that makes sense. So I usually just, if I have clients that have a work and they want to hang in a certain space, I just encourage them to check it frequently throughout the year and just make sure that it's not staying perpetually humid in there. And if it is, they probably just need to move the piece to a different location that gets a dry cycle too, not just constant humidity. And that's true for acrylic or oil. That's not just a watercolor thing. So that was sap green, and I think that was my ultramarine blue. Do a little, I don't like that, so I'm going to make it a little closer so it bleeds together. There we go. to my, see if I can get more on this. It shifted somehow. Okay. This is the Cobalt. Ooh, I like how that just happened there. I hope you guys are seeing it. Isn't that cool when those colors bleed together like that? That's what's so fun about it. My favorite part. That's a watercolor only kind of beauty thing. I like to say that I'm a multimedia artist because I can't seem to pick just one media that I like better than any other. And the nice thing about having worked with Winsor Newton for a while is I've had the opportunity to try a lot of different media. And what's fun is getting to see what makes a particular media unique and beautiful. And to me, that unpredictable bleeding quality, the characteristics of the watercolor, you can't beat it compared to oil or acrylic.
Marla, we're getting a lot of people because we did put out the class was going to be an hour. So we're getting a lot of people asking, you know, how long it's going to take. We did take some time. We wanted to take a lot of time off to answer some questions. But once you get, she's in a groove here, she could see that she will continue on. We will complete it. But as I mentioned earlier, and I put it in the chat, there is the entire class is being recorded, and it'll be live in 24 hours at michaels.com/classes. I put that in the chat. So Marla's a little more than halfway there, just because we don't want to lose too many people because I know they're going to leave. We do have what the finished artwork looks like, but she's going to kind of pick up the pace a little bit to just show how, you know, how just some of the colors are going to work out and blend together. And as we said, the effects will, in fact, you'll get various results depending on the brush size that you use, the saturation, how much water you're using, the colors that you want to blend next to each other. Because you can see she's going back and touching. One of the things that's the, you know, the allure and it's very forgiving with watercolor is that you could always go back and touch it up with some water. You could reactivate.
Yes, definitely. So do you want me to pause here and show the other examples, or do you just want me to keep going? Because
let's keep going for a little bit, because I think that you're making some really good progress, because I think people are really enjoying it. And as I said, it will be recorded, and we do have on the site, we have the picture of the finished artwork. And like I said, we encourage everyone, make it with Michaels. I put that in the chat as well, so you could share your finished artworks.
Yes, and if you want to tag me,
people are asking about you particularly because they're really interested. They're really engaged with you at this point, and where to follow you. They're asking about that as well.
That makes my heart happy. Thank you. I'm at Marla Morrison Art on Instagram, and I would love to stay in touch with you. Yeah, if you want to tag me when you post your creations, I would love to take a look and see it. That would be really awesome. So I guess you could, you can just do hashtag Marla Morrison Art, and I would be able to see it that way. Or you can tag me. Yeah.
Yeah, this is what really, there's been some really great feedback about what, you know, people are really engaged with what you're doing. We are going to have other watercolor classes that are going to be coming up in different types of techniques and different instructors. So yeah, stay tuned to the Michaels class curriculum website. And yes, we're very happy that we're getting some really favorable feedback with Marla, and we knew that this was going to be a nice opening class for us to start off our curriculums that we're going to continue to support Michaels with.
Yeah, and I'm happy to be talking to other people outside of my house. So that's good too.
Especially now, this is a great way to connect, and you know, with Michaels providing this platform, we're really spreading, you know, a lot of goodwill and a lot of creativity and inspiration out there for a lot of artists. And even for those that are just starting out, we're getting people that are just coming in and trying it. And I don't think that this is very intimidating for anyone. And you can see it's very forgiving. You can see, you know, her colors are bleeding, and each one of you will have a different outcome. So there's no right or wrong on this one, which is really great about the watercolor technique. And it's abstract, and it's a great starting point.
Yes, we all know a circle. It just takes a little practice to get it how you want it, but everyone, I mean, anyone who sees this gets it, right? It's a repetition of the shape. You can change the colors, you can change the size. Just never gets old, that little bleeding property.
Marla, one of the questions that's coming up, because you mentioned it earlier on about the grid work and how to erase it and when you should erase it, because some people have to leave the class right now. But
Sure.
Can you just give us a heads up on what's the best way to remove that?
Sure. So you want to make sure it's completely dry, and so you can kind of tell when it's dry, but if in doubt, just allow it to sit for several hours. Yeah, because you don't want to have the heartbreak of just erasing it too soon. So just give it more time than you think. This sounds weird, but one thing you can do to check the humidity of your painting is put your face close to it. Your face has more sensitive skin, and if you feel any cool kind of air coming up, that means water's still evaporating, so it's not quite dry. And so just wait till it seems room temperature neutral if you put your face near it. And that's when you know it's dry. And then you just I just have a white vinyl eraser here. And so when I'm ready, I can just very easily erase that grid mark. And you just carefully do it. You shouldn't have to rub firmly. Just erase, and your watercolor will be left behind beautifully. So that's easy peasy.
Marla, you're progressing nicely, and we're getting some really favorable feedback, and we're glad that everyone participated. We would love to have your feedback. Though you will be receiving a email survey afterwards, so feedback is welcomed, and we want to be able to keep providing these types of classes for you. So just let us know, and we will hopefully come back to you with the content that's really engaging and appealing to you. So thanks again for joining us. Once I said, it'll be recorded 24 hours from now. It'll be on michaels.com/classes. I'm going to put that in the comments. Marla's Instagram is also in the comments, in the chat. So all that's available. And if there's anything else, like I said, survey, whatever we missed or you want more of, your feedback will help us curate some more of these classes, and hope to see a lot more of you in the future.
Yeah, for sure. Yes, I'm definitely in the relaxation zone, just the repetitive. So just zoning into it, as I hope you are too. Okay, just a couple more. I'm gonna brighten that one up a little bit. Yeah, this looks just like a homogenized kind of mix, but once it dries, I used 3 different colors in there, and that you'll see evidence of those 3 different colors, most likely. It's just really interesting how watercolor does that, and it's very watercolor only kind of thing that happens. Working with what your medium will do for you. Love it. The Viridian and the Cobalt are quite lovely together. I haven't done one yet. That's just a, so I'm actually mixing these two kind of on the surface to get kind of a turquoise. Yeah, I just blipped out that circle a little bit, but then you can just kind of correct it on, just make it slightly wider. And really, when you see them all together, those little blips and, you know, quote, imperfections are just not what people look at. You're looking at the color and the beauty of it. See? Okay. Let's go back to the Cobalt here. Love it when it just bleeds like that. Just did it. Now I want to brighten up just a touch. Add some down here. Oh, let's finish with my sap green. That's the other thing too, when you're playing with your colors, every once in a while, take a little pause and look at the piece as a whole so you can kind of visually map, you know, after, it's not any major planning, it's just responding to the colors you've already put down and seeing where you might want to switch the color up or repeat the same color, if that makes sense. So it's just a matter of, I think of it like a conversation. You're working, it's talking to you, you talk back. You kind of look at how it's progressing and what you want to do. Okay, so there's my circle piece. I hope that yours has progressed as you would like. I already showed two. Let me show you a different kind of freestyle. In case you missed it, this was without the grid, the same colors, but again, I kind of worked in a caterpillar format, just adding circle after circle. I could come back to that and fill the whole page if I wanted to. Very relaxing process. Don't think you only have to use circles. This is like a teardrop shape. Same color, so only changed the shape. This I actually, this was a learning curve for me because I started with a grid and realized, you know what, that's just more frustrating. So I just kind of visually mapped out the different teardrop shapes as I worked. And here I have all different parts of the teardrop could kiss other parts, right? So that whether it was the point or the back or the side, all of those gave different opportunities for bleeding and blending. And then this is an example of a smaller piece that I had done a while ago with more of a rainbow palette. Just again, kind of almost like they're trickling down like a waterfall of circles, so to speak, and just letting each color bleed. So possibilities are endless. I really enjoyed getting to that zone with you guys, and I hope this gave you the inspiration to continue as you would like on your own. Change it up as you want. Like Jeannie mentioned.
Really good feedback from just these inspirations. So as I said, she's using pretty much, you can make whatever palette you'd like. The brush sizes, she's referred to the few. On the teardrops, did you use a similar brush that you used today?
I did. I used the same brush. I just used that Filbert. Yeah. If you can spend money on one good brush, get the Cotman Filbert in the size that you think is appropriate. And that's how you could get a lot of use out of that, for sure.
And you used 1/4 and 3/4. And like I said, the palettes could be what you want it to be. Just in closing, we're getting really good feedback, and there'll be a survey that's going to be emailed to you, and give us your feedback. We're getting some really good insights from this, and this way we'll be able to cater more classes to your likes. And I just want to thank Marla, because it was very captivating. It's very relaxing. And we want to thank everyone, and we hope to see you soon.
Thank you. Thanks so much, guys.
Okay.